In a small, dimly lit art studio filled with the scent of turpentine and old paper lived a man named Liam. A young man with messy dark hair, thick eyebrows, and a small scar on his left temple, Liam often felt like he was living in the shadows of his own potential. He wore a plain navy blue hoodie that seemed to act as a shield against the world outside. Every day he would sit among his unfinished sketches, wondering if he would ever have the courage to show his true self to the world. He believed that confidence was a magical trait given to a lucky few at birth, leaving him behind in the dust of his own doubt. The studio was his sanctuary, but it was also his cage. Liam's struggle wasn't about a lack of talent, but a crushing fear of being seen and judged. He would often pick up a charcoal stick, his hands trembling slightly, only to lay it down a moment later without making a single mark. He watched the world through his dusty window, seeing people walk by with a sense of purpose he felt he lacked entirely. To Liam, confidence looked like an impenetrable armor that others wore so effortlessly. He felt like a ghost in his own life, a spectator watching the parade of the brave from a safe, lonely distance. The silence in the room was heavy, echoing the questions he was too afraid to answer. One rainy Tuesday, a simple envelope slid under his door, changing the trajectory of his quiet life. It was an invitation to the Emerging Voices exhibition at the local community center, a chance for unknown artists to display their work. Liam stared at the elegant script, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. The invitation was a bridge, but the chasm beneath it felt bottomless and terrifying. He knew that this was the pamiku, the trigger that would either break him or force him to grow. He held the paper so tightly that his knuckles turned white, the weight of the choice pressing down on his shoulders. The days following the invitation were a whirlwind of internal conflict and paralyzing anxiety. Liam looked at his blank canvases, and they looked back like judging eyes, demanding a masterpiece he didn't think he could provide. The voice in his head grew louder, whispering that he was a fraud, that people would laugh at his efforts. He paced the small studio, the floorboards creaking under the weight of his indecision. Every time he reached for a brush, the what-ifs would stop him cold in his tracks. He was caught in the classic trap of perfectionism, where the fear of doing it wrong prevented him from doing anything at all. He tried to start a painting of the city skyline, but his strokes were timid and lacked any real conviction. He would paint a line, then immediately wipe it away with a rag, frustrated by his own hesitation. The studio became a battlefield of discarded sketches and spilled ink, a physical representation of his mental state. He realized that his lack of confidence wasn't a fixed personality trait, but a muscle that had atrophied from disuse. He was waiting to feel confident before taking action, not realizing that the order was actually reversed. The frustration boiled over until he finally threw his brush against the wall in a fit of desperate anger. In the silence that followed his outburst, Liam had a moment of startling clarity that felt like a bolt of lightning. He realized that confidence isn't the absence of fear, but the decision that something else is more important than that fear. He didn't need to be fearless, he just needed to be willing to be seen while he was afraid. He picked up the brush from the floor, his eyes shifting from doubt to a quiet, burning determination. This was the climax of his internal war, the moment he decided to stop being his own greatest obstacle. He understood now that real confidence is built through the very act of doing the things that scare you. The studio transformed from a cage into a workshop of raw, unfiltered creation as Liam worked through the night. He stopped trying to be perfect and started trying to be honest, letting the paint flow without overthinking every movement. He embraced the smudges, the drips, and the imperfections as part of the story he was telling on the canvas. His navy blue hoodie was now stained with vibrant streaks of yellow and blue, a badge of his newfound commitment. He worked with an intensity he had never known, fueled by the realization that his worth wasn't tied to the outcome. By the time the sun began to rise, he had created something that felt alive, vibrating with the energy of his breakthrough. The day of the exhibition arrived, and Liam stood before the heavy wooden doors of the community center. His heart was still racing, and his palms were damp, but he didn't turn back this time. He realized that the physical sensations of anxiety were almost identical to the sensations of excitement. He adjusted his hoodie, took a deep, grounding breath, and pushed the doors open, stepping into the light. He wasn't the same man who had hidden in the shadows just a week ago. He was someone who had faced his demons. The fear was still there, walking beside him, but it was no longer the one driving the car. Inside the gallery, Liam saw his work hanging on the wall, surrounded by the creations of others. It looked different in the professional lighting, bolder and more significant than it ever had in his cramped studio. People began to wander through the room, pausing in front of his canvas to whisper and point. At first, he wanted to hide, but then he noticed the expressions on their faces, not judgment, but genuine curiosity and connection. He stood near his piece, his posture straighter than it had ever been, realizing that he belonged here. He had crossed the bridge, and the ground beneath him felt surprisingly solid and supportive. An older man with a kind face approached Liam and asked him about the inspiration behind the chaotic yet beautiful piece. Instead of stammering and looking at the floor, Liam looked the man in the eye and shared his journey of struggle and breakthrough. He spoke about the fear of the blank canvas and the realization that confidence is an action, not a feeling. As they talked, Liam felt a warmth spreading through his chest, a sense of belonging that he had craved for years. This connection was the penetration, the resolution of his long journey from isolation to community. He was no longer a ghost. He was a person with a voice that mattered. As the evening wound down, Liam took one last look at his painting before heading back to his studio. He realized that building real confidence wasn't about becoming a different person, but about becoming more of who he already was. It was about showing up, even when you're terrified, and trusting that the act of showing up is enough. The moral of his story was clear. Confidence is the byproduct of courage, and courage is simply fear that has said its prayers. He felt a profound sense of peace, knowing that he would never have to hide in the shadows again. The world felt wider, brighter, and full of endless possibilities for someone willing to take the first step. Your journey to confidence starts the moment you decide to take action despite your doubts. Like Liam, you might feel like you're stuck in a studio of your own making, but the door is always there, waiting for you to open it. Start small, be consistent, and remember that every masterpiece begins with a single, uncertain stroke. If this story inspired you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more journeys into the human heart. Comment below with one thing you're going to do this week to build your own canvas of courage. Until next time, keep creating, keep growing, and keep believing in your own voice.